The Kelvari High Command's crystalline spires hummed with emergency frequencies. As Admiral Velthar examined the tactical display, 700 worlds, gone, not conquered, not occupied, gone, where the Epsilon Meridian sector had thrived for millennia. Only empty space remained, dotted with debris fields that registered as trace metals and organic compounds. Repeat the sensor readings, Velthar commanded, his forearms manipulating holographic controls with mechanical precision. Confirmed, Admiral. 700 star systems, 18 billion sentients, complete molecular dissolution across a cubic parsec of space. The sensor operator's voice cracked through her translator unit. The only signature we detected before communication ceased was human. Velthar's compound eyes darkened. Humans, the galaxy's newest addition to the Confederacy. Barely 2 centuries since first contact. A primitive species that had somehow clawed their way off their death world and into the stars. Through sheer bloody-minded determination, they'd been quarantined to the Outer Rim territories after the incidents. How many human vessels entered the sector? Unknown, sir. Long-range sensors detected a single massive energy signature approximately 47 hours before the dissolution event. It matches no known ship configuration in our databases. A chill ran through Velthar's exoskeleton. The humans had been quiet for decades since the Titan protocols were established agreements that kept their warships confined to designated patrol zones. But if they developed new technology, sir, incoming priority transmission from the Confederate Council, the hologram of High Chancellor Murden materialized, his reptilian features tight with barely controlled fury. Admiral Velthar, you will assemble the 9th Battle Fleet immediately. The humans have violated every treaty, every agreement we made with their species. This atrocity demands immediate response. What are our orders, Chancellor? Containment first, then extermination. The human homeworld of Terra will be reduced to cosmic dust within the cycle. We cannot allow this level of destructive capability to remain in the hands of such primitives. The transmission ended, leaving Velthar staring at the tactical display. The 9th Battle Fleet, 12,000 warships, the most powerful armada in Confederate history, surely sufficient to handle whatever the humans had unleashed. But as he began issuing mobilization orders, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. The humans had a saying their diplomats often used: speak softly and carry a big stick. For 2 centuries, they'd been speaking very softly indeed. What kind of stick had they been building? 3 days later, the assembled fleet stretched across space like a metallic constellation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities flanked by swarms of fighters and support vessels. The combined firepower could sterilize entire worlds in minutes. Yet as they approached the edge of what had once been the Epsilon Meridian sector, every sensor officer reported the same impossible readings. Nothing. Absolute void where stars should burn. Fleet Admiral, came the whispered report from the lead scout ship. We're detecting a single object at the sector's edge. Massive energy signature. It's moving toward us. Velthar's blood ran cold as his instruments resolved the contact. One ship, larger than anything in their databases, its hull reflecting no light, absorbing sensor beams like a hungry void. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and at its core pulsed something that made their most sophisticated instruments scream warnings. All ships, battle stations, we in this now. But even as the order went out, Velthar wondered if they were already too late. The humans had spent 2 centuries in silence, learning, building, preparing. And now that preparation was bearing down on them like the wrath of an angry god. The final transmission from their forward scouts came through in bursts of static. It's beautiful and terrible. The geometry is impossible. How did they? Harness, then silence. The human vessel hung in space like a predator studying its prey. Admiral Velthar had seen ships of every conceivable design across his centuries of service. But this defied classification. Its hull seemed to bend light around itself, creating optical illusions that hurt to observe directly. Geometric patterns, etched across its surface, pulsed with energy that registered on no known spectrum. Fleet disposition, all vessels report ready. Came the tactical officer's report. 12,000 ships in attack formation. The alien vessel appears to be alone. Velthar studied the tactical display. The human ship, if it was indeed a ship, measured nearly 50 kilometers in length, dwarfing even their largest dreadnoughts. But size meant nothing against concentrated firepower. The Confederate fleet could reduce a moon to rubble, open communications, all frequencies. Static filled the bridge, then resolved into a human voice, male, speaking accented Galactic standard, with an odd mechanical undertone. Confederate forces. This is Captain Remus Corvanis of the UES Harbinger. You are trespassing in a restricted zone. Withdraw immediately. Velthar felt his mandibles click in irritation. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. You stand accused of genocide on an unprecedented scale. 700 worlds were evacuated. The voice cut through his accusations like a blade. Every sentient life form was removed before the controlled stellar collapse sequence initiated. They're alive, Admiral. More alive than they've been in centuries. Impossible. Our sensors detected complete molecular dissolution. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. A pause. Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about dimensional folding? Before Velthar could respond, his science officers' panicked voice filled the bridge. Admiral, the readings from the ship, the energy signature is increasing exponentially. It's drawing power from somewhere else. The readings don't make sense. The human ship began to move, not with the lumbering acceleration of conventional drives, but with impossible fluid grace. Space itself seemed to bend around it, reality warping like heated metal. All vessels opened fire. Now, the Confederate fleet unleashed hell. 12,000 ships firing in perfect synchronization. Their combined output capable of cracking a planet's crust, plasma beams, particle accelerators, gravitational weapons, the full arsenal of a galactic civilization focused on a single target. The energy stream struck the human vessel and curved. The attacks bent around the ship like water around a stone, redirected harmlessly into empty space. Some beams actually reversed course, forcing Confederate ships to take evasive action from their own weapons. Deflector shields at impossible efficiency, the tactical officer reported, his voice climbing toward hysteria. No energy loss detected. It's like they're not even there. The Harbinger responded, not with conventional weapons, but with something far more disturbing. Reality around the lead Confederate dreadnought began to fold. The massive warship crumpled like paper, its molecular bonds simply ceasing to function. The crew's death screams cut off as their atoms dispersed into constituent particles. Then another ship, and another. Evasive maneuvers, all ships scatter, Velthar commanded. But space itself seemed to be working against them. The human vessel moved through their formation like death personified, each gesture of its strange geometry ending another warship's existence. Sir, we're losing ships faster than our computers can track. Weapons are completely ineffective. The human vessel is manipulating space-time itself. Velthar watched in growing horror as his fleet, the pride of the Confederacy, was systematically dismantled, not destroyed in the conventional sense, but unmade. Ships simply ceased to exist. Their matter and energy redistributed according to laws of physics that shouldn't exist. Full retreat, all surviving vessels, emergency jump to hyperspace. But as ships began their escape sequences, the human voice returned, now carrying an undertone of something ancient and terrible. Did you think we spent centuries idle, Admiral? Did you believe we were content to remain in your carefully constructed cage? The Harbinger pivoted, its impossible geometry casting shadows that fell in directions that had no names. We learned. We adapted. We transcended. Half the fleet managed to jump to hyperspace. The other half simply wasn't there anymore. As his own ship prepared for emergency jump, Velthar caught a final glimpse of the human vessel. For just a moment, the optical distortions cleared, and he saw it truly. The hull wasn't metal, it was living tissue, pulsing with alien purpose. And embedded in its structure were the crystalline formations that could only mean one thing. The humans hadn't just learned. They had found something in the deep dark between stars, something that had been waiting. The Confederate Council chamber echoed with the sounds of a civilization in panic. Representatives from 1,000 worlds shouted in dozens of languages as Admiral Velthar, as the briefing played on endless loop. The tactical display showed the impossible, a single human vessel reducing the galaxy's most powerful fleet to scatter debris in less than 4 hours. High Chancellor Merton slammed his ceremonial staff against the speaking podium, its crystalline head ringing like a death knell. 6,000 ships, 6,000, and this thing they've created destroyed them without sustaining a single point of damage. Senator Kixavara of the hegemony rose from her delegation, her serpentine form coiling in agitation. The humans have violated every principle of warfare, every law of physics we hold sacred. How does one ship manipulate space-time itself? Because they didn't build it alone, Admiral Velthar said quietly, his words carrying in the sudden silence the energy signatures, the geometric patterns, the way it moves through space. This is precursor technology. The chamber erupted. The precursors were legend, myth, the boogeyman story that kept entire civilizations from venturing too deep into unmapped space. Ancient beyond measure, they had supposedly transcended physical existence eons ago, leaving behind only whispers and warnings carved into dead worlds. Impossible, Merton snarled. The precursors are extinct, have been for millions of years. Then explain this. Velthar activated his personal display, showing the final sensor readings from the battle. Dimensional folding, matter energy, conversion at the quantum level. Technology that treats our understanding of physics like a child's toy. The humans found something out there, or something found them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the humans had access to precursor technology, if they'd somehow made contact with beings that existed beyond conventional reality, there's more. Velthar continued. Our intelligence services have been monitoring human communications for decades. 3 months ago, all chatter ceased. Complete radio silence from every human world, every human station. Then, 2 weeks ago, we detected massive energy buildups throughout their territory. What kind of energy buildups? The same signatures we detected from the Harbinger. They're not building ships, Chancellor. They're building something else. Something bigger. A new voice cut through the growing murmur of fear. Ambassador Veltanis of the Trade Federation stepped forward, his elderly form trembling with rage. Then we must act now, while we still can. Every moment we delay gives them time to complete whatever monstrosity they're constructing. The Chancellor's eyes glowed with desperate determination. Admiral Velthar, you will mobilize every available warship, every defense fleet, every patrol group, every training squadron. Strip the border worlds bare if necessary. We face extinction or victory. There is no middle ground, sir, even with our full strength. We're talking about perhaps 30,000 vessels. If their technology can, then we use the old ways. Merton's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. Deploy the planet killers, all of them. The silence that followed was absolute. Planet killers were weapons of absolute last resort. Stellar engineering projects capable of turning entire suns into weapons. The Confederacy maintained exactly 7 of them, each one a violation of every treaty they'd ever signed. Chancellor, Senator Kixavara protested. The planet killers haven't been activated in over a millennium. The power requirements alone are irrelevant. Merton's staff rang against the floor again. We will drain every reactor, conscript every fusion plant, burn every resource we have. The humans want to play with forces beyond their comprehension. We'll show them what happens when a desperate galaxy fights back. As the chamber dissolved into frantic planning sessions, Admiral Velthar found himself staring at the tactical display. 30,000 ships, 7 planet-killing weapons. The combined might of a galactic civilization focused on a single target. It should be enough. It had to be enough. But deep in his core, he remembered the human voice from the Harbinger. The casual confidence, the undertone of something vast and patient and utterly inhuman. They hadn't just found precursor technology, they'd been changed by it. The humans had spent centuries learning about warfare from the galaxy's greatest powers. Now they were about to teach a lesson of their own. 3 weeks later, the greatest armada in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space. 37,000 vessels of every class and configuration, supported by the 7 planet killers, artificial constructs the size of small moons. Their cores burning with the concentrated fury of captured stars. All ships report ready. Came the fleet status update. Planet killers are at full charge. Target locks acquired on the human homeworld and primary colonies. Admiral Velthar stared at the display, showing Terra a small blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. 18 billion humans live on that planet, completely unaware that their species' extinction was approaching at faster than light speeds. Or were they unaware? Human communications remained completely silent, but energy readings from their territory had increased tenfold. Whatever they were building was nearly complete. Fleet Admiral, his sensor officer called out, voice tight with controlled panic. Long-range sensors are detecting anomalies throughout human space. Massive geometric structures appearing around their major worlds. The readings are, they're impossible, sir. On the display, Terra began to change. Terra was no longer recognizable. The small blue world now hung suspended within a lattice of impossible geometry, crystalline structures that extended from the planet's surface into dimensions that shouldn't exist. Similar constructions materialized around every human world, turning entire solar systems into three-dimensional puzzles that hurt to observe directly. What in the name of the void are they building? Admiral Velthar whispered, studying sensor readings that made no sense. The structure seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, casting shadows that fell upward and creating gravitational fields that pulled in directions that had no names. His communications officer looked up from her console, face pale with shock. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from everywhere at once, every human world. Simultaneously, the main display flickered, then resolved into the image of a human female. But something was wrong with her. Her eyes held depths that extended beyond the physical, and geometric patterns moved beneath her skin like living tattoos. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies no organic throat should produce. Admiral Velthar of the Confederate Fleet, I am Director Lionavos of the Human Ascension Project. You have assembled an impressive armada, 37,000 vessels, including 7 stellar weaponization platforms. Such dedication to genocide is noteworthy. Velthar found his voice. Surrender now, and your species may survive as prisoners. Continue this madness, and we will reduce every human world to ash. Lioness smiled, and the expression contained multitudes of meaning that no single face should hold. You still don't understand, do you? We're not hiding from you anymore, Admiral. We're not running. For 2 centuries, you kept us caged at the galaxy's edge while we learned what you refused to teach us. But the precursors, they taught us everything. The display shifted, showing the interior of what looked like a vast cathedral made of living crystal. Thousands of humans moved through its corridors, but they were changed, their bodies integrated with technology that pulsed with precursor energy signatures. They weren't just using the ancient technology, they become part of it. You see, the precursors didn't disappear, Lina continued. They evolved beyond physical existence, became something greater than matter and energy. And they've been waiting so very long for a species capable of joining them. The galaxy's elder races were too rigid to set in their ways. But humans, her smile widened, revealing teeth that gleamed with metallic implants. Humans adapt. All ships opened fire. Velthar roared, planet killers, initiate stellar destabilization sequence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 37,000 warships unleashed their full arsenals, while the planet killers began their terrible work, reaching across space with invisible fingers to destabilize the very cores of human suns. The human defensive systems activated. Space itself became a weapon. The geometric structures around each human world began to spin, creating gravitational eddies that caught incoming fire and redirected it in impossible directions. Plasma beams curved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, emerging from the lattice networks to strike Confederate ships from angles that defied geometry. Shields failing on decks 7 through 12. His tactical officer screamed. The plasma is coming from inside our own ship, but the planet killers pressed their attack. 7 suns began to fluctuate as their cores were artificially destabilized. It would take hours for the effect to reach critical mass, but once it did, entire solar systems would become expanding spheres of annihilation. Then the humans showed their true power. The lattice networks around each threatened world began to pulse in unison. Reality warped, twisted, folded in on itself. The destabilized suns didn't explode, they were pulled through dimensional gates, their vast energies channeled into the precursor constructions. Impossible, Velthar breathed. There, eating the stars. The stolen stellar energy fed back into the human defensive grid. What had been a network of geometric patterns became something alive, hungry, growing. Tentacles of crystalline matter reached across space, each one capable of snapping a dreadnought in half or phasing a ship's crew into alternate dimensions. The Confederate fleet began to die, not the clean death of battle, but something far worse. Ships that were caught by the dimensional tendrils didn't just explode, they were transformed. Confederate vessels twisted into impossible shapes. Their crews merged with their own technology in ways that left them screaming across every communication. Frequency, Admiral, his sensor officer called out in horror. The 7th Battle Group. They're still alive in there. The humans are. They're integrating them into their network. On the tactical display, The captured Confederate ships began to change. Their hulls grew precursor geometric patterns. Their weapon systems restructured themselves according to alien mathematics. Within minutes, they turned their guns on their former comrades. Full retreat, Velthar ordered. All surviving ships, emergency jump to hyperspace immediately. But as the Confederate fleet began its desperate escape, direct line of Voss appeared. On every screen throughout the Armada, Admiral, before you leave, please observe what your attack has accomplished. The display showed Terra, now completely encased in a precursor lattice that extended beyond physical space. But it wasn't just Terra. Every human world had become a node in a vast network that spanned parsecs. The stolen energy from the destabilized suns fed into the construction, powering something that dwarfed even Velthar's worst nightmares. You've given us exactly what we needed to complete the ascension, Lyanna said, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the space between dimensions. Thank you, Admiral. Your sacrifice will be remembered when humanity takes its place among the precursors. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, Velthar caught one final glimpse of human space. The lattice network was spreading, reaching out toward the nearest non-human systems with tendrils of impossible geometry. They hadn't just survived the attack, they'd used it to evolve. The Confederate inner core had never seen such chaos. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as the human lattice network spread like a cosmic infection. Entire sectors went dark within hours. Their populations either fled or something else. The refugees told impossible stories. Humans who walked through solid matter, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and always the spreading geometric patterns that turned reality itself into a weapon. 63 sectors compromised in the past 72 hours. High Chancellor Murden announced to the emergency assembly. His crystalline features had taken on a gray pallor, aged decades in mere days. The human network is expanding exponentially at current rates. They'll reach the core worlds within a standard week. Admiral Velthar stood before the assembled representatives, his uniform bearing the scars of impossible battles. They're not conquering territory in any conventional sense. They're converting it. The lattice structures absorb local space-time, restructuring it according to precursor mathematics. Everything within their sphere of influence becomes part of their network. What about our defensive fleets? Demanded Senator Kixavara, her serpentine form coiled tight with barely controlled terror. Gone. All of them. Velthar activated the tactical display, showing empty space where once mighty fleets have patrolled. The humans don't fight us, they integrate us. Any ship or station caught by their expansion is absorbed into the network. The crews, they're still alive in there, but they're not themselves anymore. Then how do we stop them? Velthar's mandibles clicked in. What might have been a laugh or a sob? I don't think we can. This isn't warfare as we understand it. It's evolution. And we're being left behind. A new voice cut through the growing panic. Admiral Zexfran of the Vanguard fleet stepped forward, her cybernetic enhancements gleaming. With desperate determination, then we die fighting. The Vanguard has assembled every remaining warship from the inner core 230,000 vessels. If we can't stop them, we'll make them pay for every parsec. The Chancellor nodded grimly. Do it. Make your stand at the Kepler Junction. If they want the core worlds, they'll have to go through the entire Confederate Navy. 3 days later, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of Confederate space. 230,000 warships of every class and configuration. From massive dreadnoughts to swarms of fighters, the combined firepower could sterilize a dozen worlds simultaneously. It wasn't enough. The human network approached not as ships but as space itself. Reality warped and twisted as the lattice expansion reached the Kepler Junction, transforming empty vacuum into a maze of crystalline geometries that extended into dimensions that hurt to perceive. All ships, weapons free, Admiral Zexfran commanded from her flagship. For the Confederacy, for every world they've consumed, the response was glorious and terrible. 230,000 ships firing in perfect unison, their combined output capable of cracking a planet's core. The space around the Kepler Junction became a storm of plasma and particle beams, gravitational weapons, and exotic matter projectiles. The human lattice absorbed it all, not deflected or neutralized, absorbed. Every erg of energy fed into the network, powering its expansion. The crystalline structures grew larger, more complex, reaching out with tendrils that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Direct hit on the lead formations, came the tactical report. No damage detected. Energy readings from the lattice are increasing exponentially. Then the humans struck back. Reality became fluid around the Confederate fleet. Ships found themselves existing in multiple locations simultaneously. Their crews scattered across dimensional boundaries. Weapons fired backward through time, striking their own vessels moments before they were deployed. Physics became a suggestion, rather than a law. The dreadnought Sovereigns was simply folded in half, its molecular bonds rewritten according to impossible mathematics. The crew's screams echoed across dimensional barriers. As they were integrated into the growing network, within moments, the ship's weapons turned on its former allies, now firing rounds that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. "Admiral, we're losing entire battle groups," the communications officer screamed. "The 7th Fleet they're gone, sir. The space they occupied doesn't exist anymore." Admiral Zexfran watched in growing horror as her massive fleet was systematically dismantled. Not destroyed, converted. Confederate ships twisted into impossible configurations. Their crews merged with technology that operated according to precursor principles. Each converted vessel became a node in the expanding network, spreading the infection further. "Emergency retreat. All surviving vessels. There is no retreat." "Admiral." The voice came from everywhere at once, carried on frequencies that bypassed their communication systems entirely. Direct line of Voss materialized on the main display, but she was no longer recognizably human. Her form shifted between dimensions, existing as both matter and energy simultaneously. "You fed us well," she continued, her voice now harmonizing with itself across multiple octaves. "Every weapon you fire, every ship you send, it all becomes part of the network. You're not fighting us, Admiral. You're joining us." The lattice network pulsed with absorbed energy. Confederate ships were pulled into its geometric embrace, their hulls restructured into crystalline patterns that extended beyond three-dimensional space. The crews inside were integrated into the network, not killed, but transformed into something that existed across multiple states of being. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting similar networks throughout human space," the sensor officer reported, his voice climbing toward hysteria. "They're not just expanding toward us, they're expanding in every direction, the entire galaxy." The tactical display updated, showing the horrifying scope of human expansion. The lattice networks weren't just spreading through Confederate space. They were reaching toward every major galactic civilization simultaneously. The hegemony, the Trade Federation, the outer colonies, all of them reporting the same impossible phenomenon. As the last Confederate ships at Kepler Junction were absorbed into the growing network, Admiral Zexfran made a final transmission to the core worlds. "This is Admiral Zexfran to Confederate Command. The fleet is lost. The humans, they're not conquering the galaxy, they're becoming it. May the void have mercy on us all." The transmission cut to static as the Vanguard twisted into impossible shapes, its crew's final screams harmonizing with the network's dimensional song. The Confederate core worlds burned with the light of desperation. Every available ship had been recalled, every defense platform activated, every weapon charged to maximum capacity. The Inner Council had made its final decision. If they couldn't stop the human expansion, they would deny the galaxy itself to their transformed enemy. High Chancellor Murden stood in the primary command bunker beneath Confederacy Prime, watching tactical displays that showed the scope of the disaster. The human lattice networks had consumed over half the galaxy in less than a month, transforming entire sectors into geometric puzzles that existed across multiple dimensions. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of impending doom. "All remaining fleets have fallen back to the core defense perimeter." Admiral Velthar reported. His form showed the strain of constant battle exoskeleton cracked, 2 of his forearms in regeneration sleeves. Approximately 50,000 vessels remain operational. "The Omega Protocol is ready for implementation." The Omega Protocol, the ultimate contingency plan that every galactic civilization hoped never to use, complete stellar destabilization of the core world suns, creating a chain reaction that would consume a significant portion of the galaxy. Better the death of everything than absorption into something alien and unrecognizable. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human network. It's coming from inside our own defense grid." The main display flickered, revealing direct line of Voss. But what appeared could no longer be called human. Her form existed in a constant state of flux, shifting between matter and energy, dimensions folding around her like living fabric. When she spoke, Her voice carried harmonics from across the electromagnetic spectrum. "Chancellor Murden, we meet at last, though not as either of us might have expected." Her smile contained mathematical principles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "You're preparing to destroy yourselves rather than join us. How predictable." Murden stepped forward, his ceremonial staff glowing with accumulated charge. "We will not allow our galaxy to become part of your abomination. Better death than transformation into something alien." "Alien?" Lionel laughed, and the sound resonated across dimensional barriers. "Chancellor, we were never trying to make you alien. We were trying to help you evolve. The precursors didn't disappear, they transcended. They became something greater than matter and energy, beyond the limitations of three-dimensional existence." The display shifted, showing the transformed human worlds. But now Velthar could see what they truly were: not conquered territory, but something far more profound. The lattice networks weren't weapons or constructions. They were living ecosystems that existed across multiple planes of reality simultaneously. "The civilizations you think we destroyed," Lina continued, "they're all here, every species, every individual consciousness, preserved and enhanced within the network. Death is a limitation we've moved beyond. Scarcity is a concept that has no meaning when you exist across infinite dimensions." "Lies," Murden snarled. "We've monitored your expansion. Entire worlds have gone silent because they've joined something greater than themselves." Lina's form solidified slightly, taking on an appearance that almost resembled her original human shape. "Do you remember the Kelvari of Epsilon Meridian, the ones you thought we destroyed?" The display changed, showing a crystalline lattice structure pulsing with familiar energy signatures. Velthar's compound eyes widened in shock as he recognized the pattern's consciousness matrices. That matched the Kelvari neural templates exactly. "They're alive, Admiral, all 18 billion of them, existing in a state of being that your three-dimensional minds can barely comprehend. They moved beyond the limitations of biological existence, while retaining everything that made them who they were." "Show us," Velthar found himself saying, ignoring the Chancellor's glare. The display transformed into something that shouldn't have been possible. Velthar could see the Kelvari, but not as they had been. They existed as patterns of light and energy within the lattice structure. Their consciousness expanded to encompass multiple dimensional states. They were more than they had ever been, capable of experiences that transcended physical reality. "This is what we offer," Lina said softly. "Not death, not conquest, but evolution. The next step in conscious existence. The precursors achieved this transformation millions of years ago, and they've been waiting for other species to join them. And if we refuse, then you'll remain trapped in three-dimensional existence while the rest of the galaxy evolves beyond you." "But Chancellor," Lina's expression became almost pleading. "Why choose limitation when you could choose infinity?" Murden looked around the command bunker at his staff, seeing the same conflict in their expressions, the promise of transcendence, warred with the fear of losing everything they understood about existence. "You're asking us to stop being who we are," he said finally. "I'm asking you to become more than you ever thought possible." Lina gestured, and the display showed the full scope of the lattice network. It wasn't just a network, it was a new form of life itself, spanning multiple galaxies, incorporating billions of consciousness matrices into something that existed beyond the physical universe. The countdown timer for the Omega Protocol showed 30 seconds remaining. Velthar stepped forward, his decision made. "Chancellor, I've seen what we're fighting against. It's not death or conquest. It's..." He struggled for words. "It's what we might become if we're brave enough to let go of our limitations." Murden's hand hovered over the Omega activation switch. 30 seconds to choose between certain annihilation and uncertain transcendence. "If we join you," he asked, "will we still be ourselves?" Lina smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human again. "You'll be everything you are now, and everything you could ever become." The timer reached 0. Murden's hand moved away from the switch. 6 months after the last Confederate ship powered down its weapons and accepted integration into the lattice network, the transformation was complete. What had once been a galaxy of separate, competing civilizations was now something unprecedented in cosmic history, a unified consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Velthar, though the title held little meaning, now existed as both his original form and something far more complex. His consciousness expanded through crystalline matrices that spanned light years, capable of perceiving reality from perspectives that his biological brain could never have comprehended. He retained every memory, every aspect of his personality that had made him who he was, but now experienced existence on levels that transcended physical limitations. He found himself drawn to what had once been the Kepler junction, now transformed into a nexus point where dozens of dimensional planes intersected. Here, the consciousness patterns of a trillion beings merged and separated in an eternal dance of shared experience. Fascinating, isn't it? The voice belonged to High Chancellor Merton, though he now existed as a pattern of living energy within the lattice structure. I never imagined existence could be so vast. Velthar's response came as a harmony of thought that resonated across multiple frequencies. I find myself remembering our fear, how certain we were that joining the network meant death. Yet here, we are more ourselves than we ever were in biological form. Round them, the network pulsed with the activities of countless civilizations. The Kelvari had established vast art installations that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The Trade Federation's consciousness patterns had created economic systems that operated according to principles of abundance rather than scarcity. Even the most aggressive warrior species had found new purpose in exploring the infinite possibilities of transcendent existence. Admiral, came a familiar voice. Director Lina Voss materialized nearby, her form now indistinguishable from the network itself. I wanted to show you something. The dimensional space around them shifted, revealing a vast construction that dwarfed even the most ambitious engineering projects of the old galaxy. It was a gateway of sorts, built from crystalline matrices that extended into dimensions that had no names. But this wasn't just precursor technology, it was something new, something that combined the ancient knowledge with the collective creativity of every species that had joined the network. What is it? Velthar asked, though part of him already knew. The next step, Lina replied. The precursors who created this network weren't the first to achieve transcendence. They were part of a chain that extends back to the beginning of the universe itself. And now, we're ready to join that greater community. The gateway pulsed with energy that existed across multiple planes of reality. Through its crystalline aperture, Velthar could perceive glimpses of something vast beyond comprehension, networks of consciousness that spanned not just galaxies, but entire clusters of universes, forms of existence that made their current transcendence seem elementary by comparison. The precursors told us this would happen, Lina continued. When a species achieves true unity, when they move beyond the limitations of individual existence, they become capable of joining the greater community of transcendent civilizations. We're not the first, and we won't be the last. Merton's consciousness pattern flowed closer to the gateway. His perception extended across multiple dimensional states. And our galaxy, what becomes of it? It remains, Lina assured him. The network will continue to exist, to grow, to welcome new species as they achieve their own transcendence. But those of us who are ready, we can explore what lies beyond, even this level of existence. Around them, the network hummed with discussion as billions of consciousness patterns debated the choice. Some, like the newer additions to the network, were content to explore the infinite possibilities of their current transcendence. Others, particularly those who had been part of the lattice from the beginning, felt the pull of something greater. Velthar found himself thinking of his original form, his biological limitations, his simple three-dimensional existence. That being could never have imagined the choice he now faced to remain in a state of existence that encompassed multiple galaxies, or to transcend even further into something that defied comprehension. What guarantees do we have? Asked the consciousness pattern that Velthar recognized as belonging to Senator Kixavara. How do we know this isn't just another form of absorption? Lina's response carried harmonics of absolute certainty, because the choice is ours to make. The network doesn't compel transcendence, it offers it. Those who wish to remain can do so indefinitely. Those who feel ready to explore what lies beyond the gateway will be here, as if summoned by their discussion. New consciousness patterns began to approach the gateway. Velthar recognized some of them former Confederate officers, Kelvari scientists, Trade Federation merchants, even some of the warrior species who had fought so fiercely against the initial transformation. All had found something in their transcendent existence that called them toward even greater possibilities. I'm going, Merton announced, his decision resonating across multiple frequency bands. I've spent my existence governing, making choices for others. Now I want to discover what I might become when freed from even these expanded limitations. One by one, consciousness patterns began to flow toward the gateway. Not all of them, perhaps. Only a tenth of the network's trillion inhabitants felt ready for this level of transcendence. The rest would remain, continuing to explore the infinite possibilities of their current existence, welcoming new species as they achieved their own evolution. Velthar hesitated at the threshold. Beyond the gateway lay possibilities that his expanded consciousness could barely grasp, forms of existence that operated according to principles that transcended even the precursor understanding of reality. It was terrifying and magnificent. In equal measure, Admiral, Lina said softly, her form already beginning to merge with the gateway's energy patterns. What does your instinct tell you? Velthar thought of his long military career, of the battles fought and the decisions made in the name of duty and honor. But beneath all of that, he remembered what had driven him from the beginning: not fear of change, but curiosity about what lay beyond the next horizon. My instinct tells me that existence is meant to be explored, he replied. That consciousness is a gift meant to be expanded, not limited. He flowed toward the gateway, his consciousness pattern merging with the crystalline matrices that formed its structure. For a moment that lasted eternity, he experienced existence from every possible perspective simultaneously. Past, present, and future collapsed into a single point of infinite understanding. Then he transcended. The last thing Velthar perceived of his former existence was the galaxy itself, not as a collection of stars and planets, but as a living organism of consciousness, a possibility. The lattice network continued to pulse with the activities of a trillion beings, welcoming new species, exploring new forms of existence, growing ever more complex and beautiful. Somewhere in that vast network, new consciousness patterns were stirring. Species that had once feared the human expansion now approached the lattice boundaries with curiosity rather than terror. They had seen what transcendence truly meant: not the end of individuality, but the beginning of infinite possibility. And in dimensions that existed beyond the physical universe, the transcended consciousness that had once been Admiral Velthar joined something vast and ancient, and eternally growing, a community of evolved civilizations that spanned not just galaxies, but entire realities, each one contributing to an understanding of existence that grew more profound with every new addition. The humans had entered the galaxy as a single species confined to the outer rim. They left it as part of something immeasurably greater: gardeners of consciousness, guides for species ready to take the next step in the endless journey toward understanding what it truly meant to exist. In the empty space where the Epsilon Meridian sector had once been, new stars began to form, not through natural stellar processes, but through the conscious will of transcendent beings who understood that creation and destruction were merely different aspects of the same infinite dance. The sector was gone, the galaxy was transformed, and somewhere beyond the boundaries of physical reality, consciousness itself continued its eternal expansion toward possibilities that had no limits. One human fleet had entered. The entire galactic sector no longer existed because it had become something far more magnificent than anyone had ever dared to imagine.